So it's our pleasure to introduce our first speaker for PFAL 2020. In fact, I found out recently it's our first ever international speaker. Amy is currently working at Leiden University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. She has a wealth of experience in teaching English. Amongst other things, Amy has helped develop English language programs and writes a blog to inspire teachers. So we'll go.
Good morning. I feel very welcome. I'm going to start by putting my PowerPoint here up on the screen. Thank you very much for your kind words. To expand upon it a little tiny bit, I am a teacher trainer for primary teachers in the Netherlands. So that is my field of expertise, and I worked a lot with learning, teaching how to teach children a foreign language. So that's my insight for today. So at the end of this 2-hour term, what I'm really hoping is to have given you some information about teaching foreign languages to children, especially as it pertains to the Netherlands, so that you can make that transfer to your own situation later on. I hope to give you some inspiration for activating people that you work with and helping them get excited about learning foreign languages, and also a little bit of perspiration, or it wouldn't be a real workshop a la Amy Klipp. Okay? So we're going to work on Chit-Chat in EFL Lessons. And I realize that not all of you teach English as a foreign language, or even any foreign languages. You're studying linguistics and that kind of thing. So this is a little bit outside of perhaps what you're expecting to hear or to learn about today. What can I say? I was invited by a former student, and of course I never say no to my students, especially not when they say please. So here I am. What I also have for you is I have copies of my PowerPoint. It might be handy for you if you wanted to take notes or anything like that. So I'm just going to put some piles here on the tables, and then you can divide them among yourselves, fairly honestly. I'll let you know to do that. I'll also do other reference later on. I have lots of materials I look forward to sharing with you guys. Okay? So, moving forward, I am an experienced early teacher. I am a teacher trainer in Leiden, and that's my ambition for today. Facts, fun, and inspiration for more cooperative teaching activities in your foreign language lessons. And as is my want, I'm going to make you guys work. It's not just me talking for 2 hours, thank heavens, or you would all fall asleep. So we're going to start with a game, and it's called Wakan Tanka. And just to get you a feel for, teaching foreign languages to young children. So I'm going to give you a game. It's called Wakan Tanka. This is how it works. Step 1, I hand out a few speaking cards. Step 2, you all have to stand up and you have to walk around. And you're going to have a short conversation. This is how the conversation goes. I'm going to give you a card with a model with you, okay? We're going to pretend we walked around and we just met, and I say, "Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you got the time?"
Yeah, the time is 11:10.
Okay, thank you. And because I have no card, you're going to give me the card. And then we walk around, and then we're going to meet, and you can ask me if I've got the time, and I'll give you the time. So we'll have haves and have-nots. If you don't understand it, don't worry. This is normal. As you figure it out, you'll be like, "Oh, now I get the game," and don't worry, you'll get it just in time for us to level up and make it more complicated. Are you ready?
Yes.
Good. Stand up and come around in this area. Okay? Good. Up here, so we've got a have, a have-not, a have, you're the friend, I trust you. Have, a have-not, a have-not, you're a have. And, let me see, have-not, you're a have. And you are have-not, and you're a have. Okay, good. So let's all walk around and practice a simple conversation. It seems we have to start walking. Good, go. We'll find a have-not here, because you got the time. So, yes. Thank you.
It's 11:10.
Have you got the time?
It's 25
Hi, do you have the time?
It is
So,
1 past 2.
Thank you.
Do you have the time?
It's on and it's now 1:45. Is that better for you? Alright. We've got the time. It's 2:45. Alright, thank you. Okay.
She was looking last.
Freeze.
No, that's not the game.
We're gonna level up, guys. Because we're not just telling the time, now we're going to talk about our daily teaching schedules as primary school teachers. So you have things like recess, or you have like music, or English, or art. Who's a have-not? If you're a have-not, you're going to get a card from me now. And you have a look at that. You're a have-not. You're a have-not. More have-nots, more have-nots. Okay, so what kinds of questions can you ask each other now? Because now we want questions that will combine the time and the subject, not put it together somehow. If I have science, and I find Anthony here, and I say, Anthony, what time do you teach science? What's the logical answer for you to give me?
15 to 2.
All right, and then we trade cards. Okay? So then I'm going to find Olivia here. I'm going to say, what do you teach at 1:45?
I teach music.
All right, so we switch out then, okay? Is this clear?
Yes.
Good, get to work.
Right, okay.
Hello.
What
do you teach at 1:45?
We swap.
I don't teach. I have a recess.
Oh, that's nice.
What time do you teach science?
Ben, I teach science at 1:45.
What is your lesson at 12:15?
I don't have a lesson, but I have recess.
Oh.
What time do you teach science?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
What time do you go to work? 12.
Walking around. Oh, you go. Oh, that's very proud. What time do you teach PE?
I teach PE at 9:05.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, very early.
Okay. Listen so really well. It's excellent. What you're going to do now is you're going to hand the cards back to me, and you're going to sit down, and you're going to have a think about what makes this a useful speaking activity for young learners. Okay? I'll put the cards. You can go ahead and have a sit down. Yes? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. And as you're having a think about what makes this a useful speaking activity, I have the rules of play, yes, for the games that we're going to be doing. I'll be handing those out to you guys now, okay? So, I have more copies of this, hang on. Okay? Still have the rules of play. Now, do a job. I'm just curious what kind of ideas have you got so far in terms of the walk and talk that we did. What makes this a useful speaking activity for young learners? What are some ideas? Yes.
We said that it's kinesthetic, you know, with younger children, it's sort of getting them up, moving around rather than static.
Yeah.
So we thought that's quite nice.
So the movement
Yeah.
helps them relax a little bit. Yeah, good. What else makes it good?
They talk to different people, so everyone gets to practice with lots of partners, so it maintains the interest.
Okay, great. Other ideas?
You also said that when they're mixing with other people, they're mixing with people with different abilities, so they're actually learning off each other as well.
Yeah, so we're mixing the abilities together. Great. Any other ideas? Yeah? Yeah, one more
We
idea.
just said it's repetitive, and it's something that they would use a lot, and that is something that's useful for them, about knowing the times and the subjects. It's something
It's
that
a very structured
Sure,
question
yeah.
answer, right?
Yeah.
So you can practice the same question answer, but with different kinds of answers each time. So you get a little variety, with the structure. So you get that. And, really importantly, how much time, let's imagine we were doing this for 2 minutes. Of those 2 minutes, how much time were you speaking?
As a teacher.
Just as people who were in the Wakan Tanka.
All the time, or listening.
You were talking the whole time and listening the whole time, right? So you were linguistically active the whole time. How much time was I talking? I wasn't. I was just listening to you guys, right? This is important. This is the crux of what I'm going to be talking about with you guys today. Is how do we maximize that linguistic activation and minimize the teacher talking time in the lessons? Okay? And that is one of the things that make this a very useful speaking tool for kids. Another more question I have for you is this. How many of you, when you think about talking in front of the group, as opposed to talking one-on-one, what does this do for your level of comfort?
Makes you more comfortable.
It makes it easier for us to talk, right? When you're talking one-on-one with people and not in front of the whole group, all of a sudden, who hears your mistakes? Just one person. That's it, and that person can help you. If you make that mistake in front of the whole group, or if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to make a mistake, what happens to your willingness to speak? Right? So that's important too. So we'll continue on. We're focused on speaking today because this is a skill that everybody can do. Young children can speak. In the Netherlands, we teach English in 11 and 12-year-old classes. We can start with 4-year-olds, but even 4-year-olds can speak in a foreign language. And when you're speaking, you're learning a language. So this is why we're focusing on it. And yet, this skill is a part that publishers tend to ignore. They tend to focus on listening. They tend to focus on reading and writing out your answers. And they'll have the occasional do this role play, but all the things that lead up to that role play we tend to skip over, which is a bit of a problem. And it's also not very easy to assess. People and Dutch teachers in general feel very uncertain about how do I assess my speakers? How do I say how well they're doing? We're not going to focus on the assessment aspect today. We don't have time for that, but we will focus on getting them to talk in the first place. That's our focus for today. So, before we move on, I want to give you some information about English in the Netherlands. Now you see this map here. That is the Netherlands. And all those green dots are a special kind of school. In 1986, English became a part of Dutch primary education. They had to teach it in the last 2 years of Dutch primary education. So in groups 7 and 8, or I think you would call it grades 5 and 6. Okay, it became legally required. In 2004, the first few schools, 4 schools, started teaching English, early English as a foreign language, meaning we started English in kindergarten. Now, this project, it was a pilot at the time, it hit national news, and it created shockwaves. People were shocked. Oh my God, teaching English to little kids, how is it possible? They can't do this. They're going to stop learning Dutch. It was a problem, and it made national news. And there are still people today who are afraid that it will affect how well children learn Dutch. It has since been misproven, all those fears, but they are fears and they have to be discussed properly too. In 2016, the law was changed and it said schools are now allowed to spend 15% of all their total teaching time in a foreign language. Very often schools do the foreign language in English, but they also choose for German or French. And of course there are schools who also teach Frisian because of Friesland. Frisian is a full language, so they have bilingual education. And in 2018, nearly 1,200 schools out of the 6,000 grade schools that we have are teaching English as an early foreign language. So these green dots are representative of those 1,200 schools that are teaching early English. There is a new curriculum coming to the Netherlands. Not everybody's equally pleased about it, but when it does show up, and it will, English in grade schools will become even more important, and foreign languages in primary education will become even more important. So I'm really looking forward to it. And of course, in the Netherlands, we speak really good English. According to us, we speak it the best of everybody in Europe, and the Scandinavians are eating our dust with a whole 0.1 point difference. We're doing our best. We like to speak English. We like to speak any languages that will help us sell you our products. So, that's what we do. Longitudinal developments in the Netherlands. What has been happening in English in the last 5 years? The PPON, results for English, the PPON stands for this research project that happens every so often, periodical research about educational developments. And English is tested every 5 years. And they've been testing English speaking for children and listening and reading and writing. And what they noticed, despite this increase of schools that are starting to teach early English, because it has been going up like this, the reading and listening has actually been declining in the last 5 years. Not significantly, but we're keeping an eye on it. Conversational skills and vocabulary are the same, which is a bit shocking, because I would think if we're increasing the amount of time that we're teaching and we're increasing the amount, how early we start with English, we're starting earlier and earlier, you would think that would actually be on the rise. But apparently this is not the case. That just gives us food for thought. They couldn't explain why that was, but it was something we had to think about. Does this thing work? No? Okay, let's go with this then. Publishers, however, are starting to catch on to the fact that English is getting taught earlier and earlier. They're finding more and more books, internet methods, and that kind of thing for getting schools to start teaching English earlier. They all say it's a communicative method. When I go through and look at their materials and I think, okay, I'm very critical, I'll be honest. I'm extremely picky when it comes to teaching materials. Are they really working on communication? There's a lot of listening going on, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of listening, a lot of teachers pushing the buttons, but are they really talking about things? Are they really learning how to communicate? That's a good question I have to ask them. And sometimes they can say yes, but not very often. Time for a new game. Are you ready? This one is called Battleship. You know this game, right? Yes? I like it when you nod. Excellent. How this game works is this. We're not going to do sink and hit with our boats. We're going to do sink and hit with our secret smileys. Because you're going to get a board like this. This one is yours, and this is for your opponent. Okay? So here, you're going to place about 5 secret smileys. Yep. And your secret smileys are things like, I was playing poker with my dog when the cat died. Or I was skydiving over York when the bread burnt. They're silly sentences. It's okay. Alright, so you're first going to go here, and you're going to put 5 secret smileys here. Now, we're going to get into time of learning. If we look back here, teaching methodology, how do you activate your kids, for instance, is part of your teaching methodology. If you are just talking, and everybody's leaning back and listening, that is a teaching methodology. It's not very active, so I'm trying to convince you to get more active. And also the intensity of the program has to do with how much time are children talking. If we think about the bingo, we were doing different language skills here. We weren't just listening and speaking now. We were also reading and writing. Younger kids can use pictures. That's fine too. So we're practicing different things. How much time were you speaking this time? If we had 4 people at the table and you were playing for 8 minutes, how much time were you talking, more or less? About 2 minutes, right? Good. So I did a little research. If we want children to reach different levels of ability with speaking, how much time do they need to actually practice speaking, right? There's lots of different numbers, depending on context, depending on who is studying, depending on how close the languages are related. Makes it all different, right? Dutch and English are really closely related, so it's easier to learn English if you speak Dutch. Dutch and Japanese are really different, so it makes it harder. So I just picked numbers that were more or less in the middle. So this is not like terribly accurate. So if you want children to just start feeling comfortable speaking English and being able to survive like I need a piece of bread, 160 to about 200 hours is considered enough speaking practice to reach that level. In general, Dutch grade schools try to attain A1 level, so you need about 180 to 240 hours of active speaking practice to attain that level. A2 levels 200 to 240, and B1 240 to 300, more or less, again depending on the circumstances and how intense the practice is and that kind of thing. So with this information in mind, I thought, okay, how much time do we actually spend teaching English in Dutch primary schools? And of course we've got two basic kinds of English programs. We have the required English, which is just the last 2 years of primary schools. We call it regular EFL. And we have the new one that starts in kindergarten. So we call it early EFL. Okay? I asked the question, how much time do we actually spend teaching English in these two programs? So I went back to that research report, and what they said was that in Dutch education, with the regular EFL, kids will get 90 hours of English in total in those 2 years. And it's actually a very generous amount because there are a lot of schools that teach 20 hours in total or 30 hours in total. There are some schools that will teach 150 hours in total. These are the really enthusiastic ones. So on average about 90 hours in total. And the schools that claim to be early EFL, we're looking at 200 hours in total on average. So we're looking at not even achieving the pre-A1 level to maybe achieving A1 level, which is a bit of a lost opportunity, because you would think starting with kindergarten English, you could easily attain A2 or even B1 level. So what's happening here? So I had a little more look. I said, we're allowed to spend over 1,000 hours teaching English, or teaching any foreign language for that matter, and we're not doing it. So we're not even coming close to achieving what we actually could achieve in learning a foreign language. And there are reasons for those choices. One of them is, how do you spend 3 hours a week teaching in a foreign language if you don't feel so confident with it? Even so, if you use those 200 hours really effectively, you can get farther. You can get to an A2 level. Okay? So it is possible, but how do you do that? Now, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. I want you to think about primary schools where you're from. Okay? Some of you are from China, some of you are from local schools here, other schools. If you think back to primary schools, how much time did you get foreign language learning? Some of you will have learned French back in grade school, or Spanish in grade school, or English in primary education. How much time did you actually spend doing that? Make a note for yourself, because we're going to learn a new game. Okay? And the question is, how much time do children in your school learn a foreign language per year? Okay? So if you have to think, now we're going to do some math, because we're thinking maybe an hour a week. It's a 40-week school year, that makes 40 hours. So, in that calculation, in that school they can learn 40 hours of English a year. Is that clear what the question is about? Okay. Now, we're going to get into time of learning. If we look back here, teaching methodology, how do you activate your kids, for instance, is part of your teaching methodology. If you are just talking, and everybody's leaning back and listening, that is a teaching methodology. It's not very active, so I'm trying to convince you to get more active. And also the intensity of the program has to do with how much time are children talking. If we think about the bingo, we were doing different language skills here. We weren't just listening and speaking now. We were also reading and writing. Younger kids can use pictures, that's fine too. So we're practicing different things. How much time were you speaking this time? if we had 4 people at the table and you were playing for 8 minutes, how much time were you talking, more or less? About 2 minutes, right? Good. So, I did a little research. If we want children to reach different levels of ability with speaking, how much time do they need to actually practice speaking, right? There's lots of different numbers, depending on context, depending on who is studying, depending on how close the languages are related. Makes it all different, right? You know, Dutch and English are really closely related, so it's easier to learn English if you speak Dutch. Dutch and Japanese are really different, so it makes it harder. So I just picked numbers that were more or less in the middle, so this is not like terribly accurate. So if you want children to just start feeling comfortable speaking English and being able to survive like I need a piece of bread, 160 to about 200 hours is considered enough speaking practice to reach that level. In general, Dutch grade schools try to attain A1 level, so you need about 180 to 240 hours of active speaking practice to attain that level. A2 levels 200 to 240, and B1 240 to 300, more or less, again depending on the circumstances and how intense the practice is and that kind of thing. So with this information in mind, I thought, okay, how much time do we actually spend teaching English in Dutch primary schools? And of course we've got 2 basic kinds of English programs. We have the required English, which is just the last 2 years of primary schools. We call it regular EFL. And we have the new one, that starts in kindergarten. So we call it early EFL. Okay? I asked the question, how much time do you actually spend teaching English in these 2 programs? So I went back to that research report, and what they said was that in Dutch education, with the regular EFL, kids will get 90 hours of English in total in those 2 years. And it's actually a very generous amount because there are a lot of schools that teach 20 hours in total or 30 hours in total. There are some schools that will teach 150 hours in total. These are the really enthusiastic ones. So on average about 90 hours in total. And the schools that claim to be early EFL, we're looking at 200 hours in total on average. So we're looking at not even achieving the pre-A1 level to maybe achieving A1 level, which is a bit of a lost opportunity, because you would think starting with kindergarten English, you could easily attain A2 or even B1 level. So what's happening here? So I had a little more look. I said, we're allowed to spend over 1,000 hours teaching English, or teaching any foreign language for that matter, and we're not doing it. So we're not even coming close to achieving what we actually could achieve in learning a foreign language. And there are reasons for those choices. One of them is, how do you spend 3 hours a week teaching in a foreign language if you don't feel so confident with it? Even so, if you use those 200 hours really effectively, you can get farther. You can get to an A2 level. Okay? So it is possible, but how do you do that? Now, I'm going to ask a difficult question. I want you to think about primary schools where you're from. Okay? Some of you are from China, some of you are from local schools here, other schools. If you think back to primary schools, how much time did you get foreign language learning? Some of you will have learned French back in grade school, or Spanish in grade school, or English in primary education. How much time did you actually spend doing that? Make a note for yourself, because we're going to learn a new game. Okay? And the question is, how much time do children in your school learn a foreign language per year? Okay? So if you have to think, now we're going to do some math, because we're thinking maybe an hour a week. It's a 40-week school year, that makes 40 hours. So, in that calculation, in a school they can learn 40 hours of English a year. Is that clear what the question is about? Okay. Have you got the answer in your head? Good. This this is how the game works. We're going to make two groups. One group, two groups. And you're going to stand in a circle. And you're going to do a game called Pass the Question. And how that works is this. You say, for instance, where I come from, children get 40 hours of English per school year. How about you? And then we're going to throw the ball to you. You ready? No. You're on international television, no stress. And then you can answer the question. Okay? So you can just hold that for now. Is that clear? Are you ready? Good. Stand up and make two circles. Yes?
That's a game.
Are you ready? Brandon? The only rule is you throw it underhand and everybody gets a turn. When you finish, sit down.
Right, shall we steal some people from another table? Do you want to join us, guys?
These two tables are together.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right.
And these two tables are together. Good, go ahead.
I foresee that coffee going over at some point, so I'm just going to move that.
Children will have 40 hours of Spanish per year. That's it.
Well, no, nothing is nothing.
Nothing is nothing.
But it is close to nothing.
You too.
That's it. But
Okay.
no, but they're just a few. Well, that, yeah,
Okay.
to show you
So
better.
when you're finished, go ahead and sit down. Okay.
But it's only because of the school and some an English speaking school in Madrid. Otherwise, it's actually business.
I don't think it's a curriculum.
Oh, the conversation has started. This is good. I have another question to give you guys.
Oh yeah, sorry, man.
Let me give your coffee back.
Nice cold coffee.
All right. So we're going to carry on. So can I have that Pokemon, please? Thank you. These are Pokemon. A former student made these for me at Leiden. This one actually is supposed to go pee, but it didn't do it today. Okay. It's a quiet one. Good. What makes this a useful game for kids? We're talking past a question like this.
Answering a question. So you have to produce your own sentences. So you have to think about what to say. And it's on all different levels as well.
Yep. So this was actually a rather difficult question, right? That you were passing and answering. Okay. If you can imagine for younger children, we do something like, how old are you? I'm 5 years old. How old are you? I'm 4 years old. How old are you? I'm 5 years old. And they continue around like that. So you keep it really short, short question, short answer. That helps keep the tempo going. If you get really long answers, kids are like this after a few minutes. So teacher hack, if you're going to do this with kids, keep it to a very simple question and answer. But there's something that makes this game a particularly powerful game for learners of language. It has to do with mirror neurons. Okay? Mirror neurons are those neurons in your head that reflect everything that you're seeing. So like when you're watching the video and they like fall down, they get hurt, you're like, oh, that must have hurt. Those are your mirror neurons speaking. Okay? Every time you heard and answered the question, and you heard the question being answered, you were thinking of your own. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? How did they ask the question? How does it match with what I'm going to say? So you're mentally rehearsing every single time. So when the children are going, how old are you? I'm 5 years old. They are mentally practicing, how old are you? I'm 5 years old. How old are you? I'm 5 years old. Every time before they get the turn. Okay? Mentally practicing language is also an equally important part of learning to speak a language with confidence. So when they finally do get the Pokemon or the sponge ball or the sock ball or whatever tools you use, they will feel confident in speaking and giving an answer. Yes? And again, it's that playful thing, you know, who doesn't like to throw a Pokemon ball around the classroom? I do advise soft materials for the obvious reasons of we do not want anyone getting hurt. And a soft ball like this is really handy for the really young people because, you know, reaction times, and they can catch the tail even when they don't catch the ball itself. So those are just a few teacher hacks. So that's what part of what makes this such a useful learning activity. I had another question for you guys to talk about. I heard that the conversations were coming up again, like, hey, you know, what's it like over there? What's it like over there? I do want to build in a little time for you guys to chat with each other about it. If you think about your own language lessons, you know, maybe when you were a child or were in high school, how much of those lessons were actually spent practicing speaking? And how much time would you like to spend practicing speaking? This is a good question because we also have to teach these listening, reading, and writing in our lessons. So how do we do that? What's a good balance? Okay? So this is a small discussion question. You can just do this at your own tables. And just have a think about, okay, what do we actually do right now? And what would we prefer? What would be ideal? What would be better? Okay? And it could be that it's the same thing. It happens. Maybe it's different. That happens too. Yes? So I'll give you about 5 minutes to have a nice conversation with your groups. Natural for teachers. We're naturally, what we call it, how do you call it in English? Wereldverbeteraar? What's it in English?
So
World improver.
Yeah, world improver.
That translates really badly, but there's a better word
tries
for
to
it.
improve the world.
Yes. So we have to do that as best as we can. This is sort of intrinsic to being a teacher. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually practice that. You're going to get about 1 or 2 of these sheets. And what these sheets are, what I've done is I've taken published materials from Dutch publishers for language learning. And I've just picked a lesson at random in different age groups. So I've got one that I picked out for group kindergartners, one for grades 1 and 2, and one for grades 5 and 6. And then it's different topics. And I took the lesson, and I split it into 4 parts, and just took 4 activities. And the question is, first of all, what is the activity? What's the goal of this activity? So you're looking through it like, okay, what are we trying to achieve with this piece of the lesson? The next question is, how much time does that particular piece take? We've got one that actually wrote it out for us, like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 13 minutes, but the rest you have to figure out for yourself, like how much time would I spend doing that? Next question is, how much teacher talking time do we see? And then the real challenging part is how much child talking time do you see? We're going to assume a class of 30 kids, and in a Dutch class it's about the normal size these days. I don't know what it's like in your country, where you're from. But we'll assume 30 kids just to make it easy for ourselves. So if you have an activity, for instance, that's 5 minutes long, and you see about 3 minutes of teacher talking time and 2 minutes of kids talking time, that's 120 seconds divided over 30 kids, which would be 4 seconds a child. Okay, so you make a note of 4 seconds a child. Okay? This is important because for that whole lesson, you want to know how much time is each child speaking. Okay, so at the end, you're going to go through and tally up, okay, so each child is speaking for 4 seconds, 2 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And you can figure out, okay, this is one lesson. How much time is that for the whole year? We're going to be making some big conclusions based on very little data. I understand that. This is just a touch-wind estimate kind of activity. And then after that, down here at the very bottom, you're going to suggest some improvements. How do we actually get more interactive and more child speaking time into those activities? So this is the biggest part of the workshop. So you're going to get about 30 minutes just for this piece. I'm going to give you 1 or 2 of these per table so that you can really just dig in and work together. And I've only got 3 lessons, so you can also talk with other groups and say, what have you done for this lesson? What have you done for this lesson? So we can really get these lessons really hashed out and make them wonderful. I can bring them back to the publishers and say, look, this is for you. Yes? Publishers love me just for that. Just joking. So here's one for you guys. This is for older kids. This is for your middle kids. Yes. This is for your younger kids. I'm gonna give you guys. Yep.
So Brandon, what do
Older kids
you
got clothing.
do teaching?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys
But I'm a
got,
full-time student at the minute.
so this
Yeah.
is my
You've been
one
willing to
here.
try with this one.
4 to 6 for little kids. Okay. You've got
I think there's a lot of transferable stuff.
There is, but
Yes.
not like these ones.
Yes. And then you guys have 10 to 12.
We can help
For
with
the
that.
6 years old for younger kids. And
Oh,
one more for you guys.
I've not taught children professionally, so it's just like about
I have tried to kind of make it anonymous. So it might be. Yes.
Big
So the first thing you do is you go through and you read the activity, try to figure out, okay, what's the goal, how long does it take? So you look at teacher talking time versus child speaking time. Okay? Total did each child get? Have a think. Look at your own lessons. How much speaking time in total did each child get?
Less than a minute.
Okay, so less than a minute. In the whole lesson, each child had less than a minute. Which is actually, if you're thinking 30 children times 30 minutes, that would be a 30-minute lesson for them. So we're being a little bit generous there, I think. But okay, good. It's a good start. What lesson did you have? You had the clothing one.
The clothing one, yeah.
Right, and how much speaking time did each child get?
Same, about 50 seconds.
50 seconds in total
Yeah.
per child. Okay, good. Who had the one with my family? How much speaking time did your kids get?
We haven't worked it out, so we got 8 seconds so far.
Yeah,
The
8
first
seconds so far.
Yeah.
You've also
Ooh.
got a song, so then they're singing, but they're not actually. So they're practicing, but it's not. Is that speaking? Because then they're all doing it together.
Right, we're all doing it all together, which is fine. Are they actually producing language at that point?
Kind of.
We'll count it. We'll count it. We'll be generous. Okay. With your lessons, which one are you working on? You had the theme was what will we do? Okay, so it's the middle groups. How much speaking time are your kids getting?
We've done the first half, which is around 15 seconds, so probably about 30 in total.
Okay, so about 30 seconds per kid in total. Okay, and how far had you guys gotten? How much speaking time do your children get?
About 20 seconds.
20 seconds in total? Okay, that's very generous. Good. Now we're going to move forward to the part where we actually start making changes to whatever the publisher thought up. Okay, and you've already gotten a good start there. You've already started on that for a little bit. And we're going to look at cooperative learning activities. What makes those useful? We've looked at a lot of those aspects already today, right? What makes cooperative learning activities so useful? Have a think and we can just shout them out. We've already practiced 4 of them today.
So the students can help each other.
We can help each other, yes? And activating learning activities, what makes those useful?
It's more comfortable for them.
It's comfy, yes. We'll also like to think back to the aspect of, for instance, with the walk and talk. How much time were you guys talking?
All the time.
You're
A
talking-
lot of the time.
You're talking half the time the walk and talk was going, you were talking, right? And we were playing Pass the Question. Again, you were really active with it, right? When we were playing Battleship, you were talking for about half the time that the game was being played. So it's another aspect that makes it really, really important. So we know a lot of cooperative activities now. We've been practicing them. If you've forgotten which ones they are, the rules are on the paper I gave you. Is it one that looks like, where'd it go? This one here. This particular handout has rules of play for different cooperative activities. You can use those in there. Or you can think of ones on your own. Those are also all fair game. Okay? So what you're going to do is go back to your activity and you're going to find out ways to improve it. Ways to make it more interactive, activate the kids more with cooperative learning and that kind of thing. And think about things like, what is the reason for speaking? Okay? Are we using the whole class? Are we using paired work, small group work? How are we going to do this? Every choice we make affects how much time the children are speaking. Okay? So, those are the things I want you to think about. You can get back to work now. I'm going to do one more activity, and it's called Tell Me a Story. And normally I do this with children with actual pictures, and they had to make up a story about the pictures. We're going to skip the pictures today, and you're going to make up stories about today, and about what you learned today, and what you're going to take away. Things you can think about for your story are things like, what was new? What did I learn today that was new? Or what did I realize? Because very often, if you are, for instance, an experienced educator, we already know a lot of stuff and then we forget, and then we go, oh yeah, I remember that realization. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I have a plan. Tomorrow, I'm going to do this with my teaching, or I want to do that. Or, oh, I'm going to spread this information here. And this is my plan. This is my new ambition. So something about what this workshop did with you today. These are the rules of play. You work with a partner, and you get about 3 minutes to make up one common story. This will be fun. And your one common story will be about 1 to 1.5 minutes long. And you both have to know the story, and you both have to agree with it. Okay? That's step 1. After that, we'll move on to the more complicated part. Alright? So the first part is work with your partner, make up a story about today, what you learned, something it did with you, 60 to 90 seconds long. Are you ready? Questions? Go. Partners. So you have 2 people in your group, and now you have to decide who is a story getter and who is a storyteller. Yes? The story getter has a role. They have to go get someone else's story. Okay? The storyteller stays put and they tell the story. Okay? So you're going to look your partner in the eye and make a quick decision. Who is going to sit and tell the story? Who is going to go get a new story? If you are a story getter, please stand up. Okay? Story getters, stand up. Stand up. Story getters, stand up. Okay, story getters, stand up. Okay. Next, listen carefully. So one of you two is going to be a story getter, and one of you is going to tell a story. You're going to make one up really quick in your head. And the question was, what did you learn today, okay? The story getter is going to go walk around and find a new storyteller. Then you sit down. The storyteller will tell the story, and you're listening carefully as a story getter. The story getter will then retell the story. So you're checking, did I get your story correct? If you got the story, you take the story and you go home to your original partner and you give them the story. You tell the story. And they check, did I get the story? So you're doing lots of listening and speaking and checking, did you get the story right? Okay? So story getters, you're all standing, which means you're ready to go. Walk around at random and find yourself a new storyteller. Go. Yes? Off you go. Go find someone you haven't spoken to yet today. Okay? So the ball lands in your area, you just pick it up and give me a piece of feedback and then throw it to somebody else at random. We'll see how it goes. About 5 or 6 pieces. You don't have to talk now if you don't want to, but if you do something you want to share, you can put your hand up, or otherwise you'll just get in it in turn. You ready?
Lots of different activities.
Good. Pass it on.
Games.
Good. Oh, that was a good call.
The focus is on the input of the students.
Good.
Revision.
Good. I'll give it back to you here.
Learner centered.
Okay, good. Anything else you want to say in? No? Super. Thank you. And I had a really good time. I was really, I'm thankful for your being here and for the time you spent being here and being so game as to just join in with everything and going out of your comfort zones and sharing with each other and talking with each other. I heard a lot of really good conversations getting started, so maybe in the lunchtime you can continue some of those conversations. Who knows? I lost my, oh, here's my clicker. I'm very good at that kind of stuff. You can make this language activity easier and harder for your learners. Okay, this was a very abstract thing. What did I learn today? You can do this with kids by giving them sentence starters, story starters, practicing the words you want them to use, by using one common picture or different pictures and all kinds of things. So you can adjust this to fit your learners. I won't do a think, pair, share now because we've already done that basically now. But there's one more thing that you can do in a language lesson easily to get everybody talking at the same time. Think, pair, share. So, good. Comments, questions for me? Do you have any questions left to ask? I'm just really hungry. I'm going to eat. Okay, my email is there, so in case you think of anything afterwards, you can also always email me. I do write a blog. All these activities that we did today are on the blog, including differentiation and how you can do it with different age groups. And it's my literature. So that was it. Thank you very much for being here this morning. All these things, they're here for you. I have extra copies if you think like, oh, I want to share this with people.
Okay, folks, we're going to have a lunch break now. So the lunch is in the QE 105. Feel free to walk outside and have a walk around. There is a student union bar just around there. They do actually sell beer, I think, at lunchtime. I'm not encouraging you to go there. But yeah, have a look around the quad, have a look around the university. I've been here before. Thank you very much, Amy, again. Yes. And we'll be chasing you up at 1:15. So the time's